The Leica Summicron-M 50mm f2 is a wonderful lens, we all know that. But how does it perform on a Sony A7RIII with 42 megapixels? Let's go outside and find out. Today I'm here with the Leica M10-P and the Leica Summicron 50mm f2 lens. A wonderful lens. I think it's well known that it's a really nice lens. Let me show you a little bit closer here. So, okay, here you can see. Yeah, it's really beautiful. I have the version with the lens hood included, and yeah, really nice. Today I want to find out if this lens can also perform on a Sony mirrorless camera if I adapt it to it. So I have a 7 Artisans Leica L-mount adapter for the Sony E-mount system, and I will put that Leica Summicron on the Sony A7RIII that I brought with me. So 42 megapixels, and I'm really looking forward to the results. So let's see what kind of shots we get and let's do some comparisons. Okay, I think that's a nice position for a first shot here, for the first comparison. So I'm using a tripod now to make sure that I get identical positions for both cameras, which makes it a lot easier to compare it. And I'm using live view now in order to make sure that the focusing is really correct. That's nice. That's nice. Very good. Nice. And now that was f8, and now let's go down to f2.8. Check focus. Very good. And f2. Nice. Now let's change the camera. Let's see what we get now with the Sony. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Try to get the same frame here and check the focus. F2.8 and f8. Good. That's nice. Beautiful. Okay, and let's move on. Okay, so let's do a second round. I came a little bit closer to the little hut because I wanted to be in another focus range, so a lot closer, like 4 meters away, and I can see a little bit of the background, and I focus on the hut itself. I'm using the self timer. 2 seconds. So let's start with F2. First shot. F2.8. F4. F5.6. F8. That's it with the Leica. And switch to the Sony again. Very nice. F2. Self timer, 2 seconds. Check the focus. Focus peaking works really great here. F2. F2.8. F4. F5.6. F8. ISO 100, 0.4 seconds at F8. It's getting darker. I'm really looking forward to see that on the computer and to compare it. Yeah, that's it. And now I will do, because there's, yeah, I will try it. I will do a last round with another lens, but a Sony lens. I have the Sony 24-50 f2.8 lens, and I set it to 50 millimeters. I started f2.8, and this time I could use autofocus. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And we start with f2.8. Yeah, that's it. And f8. So now that will be really interesting to see how the 24-50 zoom lens compares to the Leica Summicron. We will see. Now finally, let's go back. So we are back from the photo shoot outside. We got 2 comparison shots here, 2 different scenes. The one, it's focused to infinity, and we have some trees in it with the branches, so we can judge focus on the edges, and the other one is more closer. Yeah, so let's have a look. So the first ones are with the Leica M10-P, and you can see that we have this one. Well, Leica doesn't transfer the aperture, not always correctly here. but we have the aperture of, I thought I set it to f8. It's displaying 6.8. I'm not sure what I really did. Maybe I put it between f5.6 and f8. Doesn't matter too much. And the next one is f2.8 and f2. Let's have a closer look here. So at f6.8, if I zoom in here to the edges, the branches are very sharp. It's very clear. Here the tree itself with the structure is very nice and sharp. And also here in the center, even more sharpness, I would say. And also on the other side, everything very beautiful and very nice. And then zooming out, let's go to f2.8. So you can see in the edges we get some vignetting already with f2.8. And this is back to the f6.8, f2.8, and still at the edges pretty sharp. Maybe not to the last percent of the frame, but the tree is very sharp. All good. And f2, even more vignetting. If we zoom into 100% and look at this tree over here, it's still nice and sharp. And if we go further out in the direction of the corners, we are losing a little bit of sharpness with the open aperture. But overall, I think that's really a great and sharp image. Let's move on to the same scene here with the Sony A7RIII. This one is also f8. So zooming in with the closed down aperture, the center nice and sharp. If we move out here, the tree trunk also nice and sharp, and also the branches. What you can see is that the Sony has more megapixels, so the image appears sharper or bigger compared to the Leica. It's just the sensor resolution. Then going to f2.8, again slight vignetting in the corners, and oh, wow, that's getting a little bit blurry. Even the bark of the tree here is already not sharp anymore. And moving on to f2, let's see here. Yeah, it's totally out of focus. Okay. Maybe it's good up to that tree here, but further outward the center is still good. But on the outside of the frame, it's not very good. What I did to see that in more detail, or to have a better comparison, I overlaid these two images in Photoshop. So let's open that. Edit original. What I did, I opened the Sony picture with the 42 megapixels, and then I added the layer with the Leica M10-P image with 24 megapixels. And then I enlarged the Leica frame. So there is some interpolation here happening when I interpolate the smaller 24 megapixel picture to the 42 megapixel picture of the Sony. This is the Summicron on the Leica. And if I turn off that layer, that's the same image here now on the Sony. It's still nice and sharp. But now let's see, we go back to the Leica layer and go out to that tree over here. And then we switch off that layer. And yeah, it's totally losing the sharpness. Yeah, that's not so good. So I think it's maybe not a good idea to use the Summicron adapter to the Sony with open aperture. So I would say, from what I see here in that image on the Sony, that you maybe can only use the central region here. That one here on the outside is not usable. And also here. not usable at f2. The center is nice. This tree over here, I think still good, but that one is not good anymore. So it's probably like between those trees that you can use that frame here. Let's move on to the other scene here. Again with the Leica. If we zoom in here to that tree outside here at f8, nice and sharp, so it's very crisp, very nice. That one is f5.6, still sharp. f4, still sharp. f2.8, also sharp. f2, still good. A little bit losing sharpness here in the far corners outside here, but it's still very good. And in the center we can see it's very nice, it's sharp, and we have a nice fall off here. The bouquet is very nice in the background. Okay, let's go to the Sony frames here, and that one is f2. Again, if we zoom in here, the center is very sharp, that's good, but here in that corner outside it's the same effect here, it gets blurry, yeah, and also down here, yeah, it's blurry. Let's move on. It's f2.8, f4, f5, 6, f8. At f8, for example, it's also on the Sony with the 42 megapixels. It's sharp to the far outside. So even here the furthest away from the center in the far corners, it's very sharp with f8. And that's really nice. Also here the grass is very crisp. That's why I like the Summicron lens. f5.6, f4, it's probably still usable. f2.8, yeah, then it's losing the sharpness with f2.8. Also here I did the overlay of the f2 images. Let's see, that one is again the Leica Summicron in the center. Sharp. The Sony even sharper at f2 in the center. And on the outside, this one is Summicron on the Leica. That's on the Sony, not sharp. And now we can go to the other corner down here. You can see that this is on the Sony. The grasses are not sharp. The wood texture is almost gone. And if I switch to the Leica image, it's sharp right outside to the corners. Okay, very interesting. I think that can be that this is, so that's at least what I heard, that the Sony sensor stack is a little bit thicker in the front, and that the Leica lenses are optimized for film or for sensors with a thinner filter stack, and that's probably why the corners lose sharpness when the lens aperture gets bigger. Before I come to a conclusion here, I have a bonus lens here. I did some more shots with the Sony lens, with the Sony 24-50mm zoom lens, the 24-50G lens with open aperture of f2.8. That's what we have here. This is f2.8 on the Sony zoom lens. If we zoom in, very sharp. Still nice bouquet for f2.8. And if we go out to the far corners, this lens is very crisp. This is really amazing. The Sony lens is really great, even at open aperture of f2.8. Admittedly, the Sony lens is a lot bigger than the Leica lens, yeah, and but it's a zoom lens, so it's interesting. What is my conclusion on that? I think it is a good idea to use the Leica Summicron on the M10-P. I think that's where it belongs to, and that's what it's made for. It really performs very well and very sharp, even in the far corners on the Leica. Adapting it to the Sony is probably not the best idea, because the Leica Summicron, if I use it, then I want to use it with open aperture, with f2, with f2.8. It has a nice bouquet, so that's really then what I want to do. But for the Sony, then I have to look for other lenses and maybe for the moment use the zoom lens f2.8, but in the future maybe I get an 50mm f1.8 or 1.4. That's maybe a good idea to get a Sony lens. Yeah, that's it for today. If you liked the video and if you like the content, consider subscribing and give me a like. And see you next time.